of Science and Technology, and it's a nonprofit youth international organization that was founded in 1989 by Dean Kamen. The organization has more than 79,000 teams in its different programs, and these programs include First Robotics Competition, First Tech Challenge, First Lego League, and more. In order to be successful in any of the first programs, you need to embody the first 6 core values. The first one is discovery, meaning you explore new ideas and have the curiosity to learn new skills every day. The second one is innovation, so being creative and persistent when solving problems and never giving up when you face a challenge. Then you take these skills and persistence to make the world a better place. Another important value is inclusion, which means respecting your teammates, embracing your differences, and being open to new ideas. Then comes teamwork and working together to make your team and your community better. And lastly, having fun and enjoying what you're doing. I think that the person named Donta is muted. Could you unmute him?
FTC is the first tech challenge where teams design and construct a robot to compete in competitions throughout the United States. A team can consist up to 15 members, and a challenge is given out every year, usually around early September, and the competitions begin in the spring. The challenge usually has a theme associated with it. For example, this year's theme was Star Wars Skystone. And the challenge consists of a series of tasks and multiple rounds. There is autonomous, where there is a pre-prepared set of code that runs the robot without any user control. After autonomous, there are 2 sections designated by driver control, where the 2 drivers can manually operate the robot. Overall, it is a season-long process where a team has to design, build, program, and then test a robot that can compete in challenges to qualify for further competitions. Beyond building the physical robot itself, FTC is a great opportunity to be exposed to the field of robotics. Along the way, you will learn to overcome challenges but also inspire others. FTC requires a wide range of skills between all team members to construct an efficient and competitive robot. Creativity is essential when designing the robot because the winning robots have ideas that are separate from every other team. Another vital skill is teamwork. Teams that can quickly solve problems with creative solutions have greater team chemistry. When everyone is on the same page, tasks are completed faster and a stronger team spirit forms. A collaborative effort also results in focus and a competitive spirit. Focus is important because FTC is almost year-round and is a lengthy process. There will be major challenges, but devising a plan and remaining focused will better prepare you for competition day. And finally, a competitive spirit will guide a team to work as hard as they can to achieve their goal. If a team is motivated throughout the entire process, they will be more inclined to strive for their best on competition day. A competitive spirit is important during competitions because an early loss should not stop a team from continuing to try their best. FTC rankings consist of more than just a win-loss record, so it is crucial that a team gives its maximum effort throughout the entire competition. Overall, FTC consists of skills and tasks that can be applied in the real world and provides many opportunities as the field of robotics continues to grow.
So some general qualifier information are, there's about, in a normal qualifier, there's about 25 teams. A single team can go up to 3 qualifiers, and they're allowed to 10 more, but if you haven't qualified in those 3 qualifiers, you cannot qualify. And qualifiers allow you also to qualify for different types of state competitions, and also they allow you to practice. They allow you to practice with your robot, make sure it works, and also they allow you to gain experience in different areas of the competition, and they also allow you to scout for a higher level team so you can learn based upon them, and also they allow you to make friends with other teams. So a normal qualifier will last almost a whole day. In the beginning, you'll check in with the volunteers at the entrance, and then after all teams are checked in, the judges begin interviewing each team, and there's 3 judges that interview each team. And once the judges interviews end, the inspection for the robots in, inspection for the robots begin. And after the inspections, there is a short driver meeting that explains the rules of the qualifier. And after the short drivers meeting, the first matches begin. And after all the beginning matches are end, the playoffs start, and they talk about which teams that are qualified for the playoffs, and the semifinals and finals, and the semifinals and finals begin. And then after all matches are done, at the end of the day, there's a closing ceremony where they talk about the whole qualifier, and also they give out awards for the teams.
So yeah, as previously mentioned, inspection is the first thing that happens at the qualifiers, and it's very important. So inspection generally starts at 7:45 to 8 in the morning, and essentially it's meant to check that teams comply with the rules of the FTC competition and like the general guidelines on how to build the bot, as well as programming and also making sure you aren't damaging the field. So there's 3 different stages of inspection that you have to go through. First, there's the robot inspection, which is just to make sure that your robot is fitting the guidelines. Then there's the phone inspection, which makes sure you're using the right type of phones as well as programming. And the field inspection is to make sure that your robot can move as well as not damage the field. So yeah, the robot inspection is the first part. And the most important thing about any FTC qualifier is that all members must be wearing safety goggles. It's something that the qualifiers are extremely strict on, and you might not even be able to compete if you don't have safety goggles. So the general standards for your robot are that it must be within an 18 by 18 by 18 inch dimensions, which is extremely strict and not lenient. So you have to make sure that your robot can fit under those dimensions. Now, the other standard is that your robot must be under 42 pounds, which is generally not an issue that most teams have problems with, but it's still something to keep in mind. You also want to make sure that you have 2 sets of team numbers and alliance markers that are visible on opposite ends of the robot. We suggest using Velcro for the alliance markers since you'll have to change out red and blue in between matches. And finally, the basic guidelines are that you shouldn't really have any loose or detachable parts, and you definitely shouldn't be causing any damage to the field whatsoever. So more specific details about the robot inspection can be found in Game Manual 1. This also talks about some of the guidelines, such as you're allowed to have a maximum of 8 motors and 12 servos. You should not have any sharp edges. And wherever you're mounting your phone, you got to make sure that it's not surrounded by metal, since that can lead to short circuits and other issues. But at the same time, you want to make sure that it's easy to access, since you might have some programming or wireless connections issues that you have to figure out with your phone. So definitely make sure that it's secure, but at the same time, easy to access. So yeah, now moving on to the second stage of inspection, which is phone inspection. You have to make sure that you have a driver station and robot controller phone. They can either be any of the Moto Gs or Moto Es, as well as the Nexus 5 and Samsung 5. In terms of the robot controllers, you should be using either a Logitech controller or an Xbox 360 controller. And to program your robot, you should be using the FTC robot controller and driver station apps. They essentially provide you with a server where you can either use Java or blocks coding to program your robot. And finally, in order to connect your controllers to the driver station, you want to use a USB splitter. since it allows you to connect the two cables into one port. So the third stage of inspection is field inspection. And essentially, field inspection checks that your robot can move in a lateral motion, and also that it does not damage the playing field whenever it's moving or during any of its activities. They also make sure that your driver station and robot controller are securely connected and paired, so you shouldn't really be losing connection in between a match or, getting any interference on the radio channels. The interesting part about the field inspection is that you don't necessarily need to have an autonomous to pass, but at the same time, an autonomous is extremely important to the game. So essentially, you can still go to the qualifier, but it's, essential that you do have an autonomous, but you don't need it to pass inspection. The only real programming requirement that they do have to pass field inspection is that your stop button functions. As soon as you press it, your robot should no longer move. So some of the more detailed semantics of field inspection are, if your robot moves on initialization in autonomous, you need to have one of the stickers on the right. And also you need to make sure that whenever it moves on initialization, it's not moving any of the game pieces or damaging the field. And going with damaging the field, you have to make sure that you encase your metal parts that extrude out in rubber. It's not necessarily required, but it's highly recommended so you don't damage the tiles. Your tires are also extremely abrasive and can sometimes damage the tiles. Generally, if you use one of the FTC Andy Mark or Rev tires, you should be fine. But if you're using any third party or home materials, you want to make sure that your tires aren't damaging the field. And a nuance of the rules is that you shouldn't be using liquid lubricants on your robot. Sometimes teams use them to make sure that your gears are smooth. WD-40 is commonly used, but you're not allowed to do that in FTC since it does damage the field. And going back to some of the previous stuff, you shouldn't have any detachable parts because, again, that could damage the field. Some tips to pass inspection are that you always want to get it done as quickly as possible. In case you fail the first time, this leaves you some time to, make some fixes so that you can fit within the standards. It also leaves time for judging because sometimes it can overlap inspection and judging. And it's important that you get your inspection done early so that you aren't rushing between judging and inspection. And at all costs, you shouldn't really expect leniency on any of the standards. They are very strict about the robot guidelines, and if they aren't met, you could be disqualified. And additionally, a lot of teams forget about team markers and alliance markers and leave it off till the end. It's important that you nail these things out because it's a guideline and you can be disqualified if you don't have proper team and alliance markers. You also want to secure all your wires and batteries. This isn't a requirement to pass inspection, but it's highly recommended on our part because that prevents you from short-circuiting as well as tangling up with the other robots.
So next we're going to move on to judging. Judging is an important aspect of the competition in addition to actually competing in the robot matches. So before judging, so usually during a competition, you have an allotted time where your team goes to see the judges, and about 15 to 20 minutes before your allotted time to go see the judges, a volunteer and FTC staff member will come take you to the location where the judges are sitting. And usually competitions are held in schools or other big auditoriums. So you will usually be going to a classroom in order to present your team to the judges. You want to make sure you want to bring your robot, your engineering notebook, and other developmental items that have been important to you and your team that you want the judges to know about. Most teams also make a trifold presentation about their team. So if you had made one, you also want to bring them in so the judges can see that. You make sure your team wants to make sure that you need to be very prepared before entering judging. You need to think about ideas of who will introduce to you, who will introduce your team, what will you talk about, what is the order, and many other questions. You need to make sure people have their speaking parts ready so that you don't mess up in front of the judges. So during presenting your case to the judges, don't go too in-depth in detail. So make sure you hit on every topic you want to talk about during judging, and please do not go much into detail, because if you do, you will go over the 5-minute limit. And usually whenever presenting your case to the judges, you should not talk over a 5-minute limit uninterrupted. So if you go over this limit, judges are very harsh about this and they do not want you to go over this limit. So make sure you stay within the 5-minute limit. Judges will ask you questions about anything that wasn't explained enough. So if you feel like you want to talk about something extra, the judges may perhaps ask you a question about it, and in return you can explain about this more in detail when there is no time limit. Before an individual speaks to the judges, make sure you want to introduce yourself. Say what school you're from, what grade you're in, and before presenting, say what part of the robot you worked on, or if you worked on the outreach department, on documentation, or physically building or coding the robot. Everyone should present something. No team member should just stand there idle and not present anything. And this introduces the idea of inclusion within FTC and how everyone should talk and everyone should be involved in making the robot in the process of the FTC. At the beginning of the judging, you will give your judges the engineering notebook, and the engineering notebook is a very vital component for the judges to see if you'll win any awards. In your notebook, judges are looking for a variety of components such as your outreach and fundraising efforts, your team plans, and also the robot designs. You should include many sketches, discussions of team meetings, design evolution, processes, obstacles, and many of each of the team members' thoughts, and also more of the important stuff that you think that was important to your team during the FTC season. An additional note is that your team number and usually where you're from and a team logo should be on the front cover of your notebook. Make sure the notebook is visually appealing to the eye so the judges are immediately caught with attention to your notebook. So now we'll dive into the engineering notebook components and what is actually within the engineering notebook. In one section of the engineering notebook is robot designs. And basically what robot designs are, they're different phases of the robot and different parts of the robot and how they evolved over time and during your process. So this is where you can showcase your obstacles and challenges to the judges, how you were able to think, how you were able to problem solve about how one part of the robot wasn't working and how you were able to overcome it and design a new and unique way of designing a part of the robot. You want to make sure you show your pros and cons of each side. So if you look at the right side of the slide, the bottom right, you can see this is from an actual engineering notebook, and so it says chassis number 1. So this is the first phase of the robot chassis, and they listed pros and cons of each of the chassis, and maybe there's a chassis number 2. So you would explain how chassis number 2 is better than chassis number 1, and basically overall showing the pros and cons of each phase of the robot. You also want to make sure you include various pictures of the different phases of your robot. This also helps the judges visualize on how you developed your robot and how you overcame obstacles.
You usually want to start off your engineering notebook with a team profile to let the judges kind of get to know your team. So basically you would introduce each team member and kind of like give the judges a deeper insight to each member. So you could show their creativity, their hobbies outside of robotics, and specifically what do they do on the team. And this basically shows the judges the personality of the team. Our team profile specifically asks personality-based and FTC-related questions to our members so the judges can get to know every person on our team. The primary focus of the engineering notebook is to document the journey the team faced throughout the season. So that's why meeting logs are this important, because you need to document what occurred during each meeting, what was accomplished, and a kind of a reflection on what happened so the judges get an idea of your goal. Pictures are a must for the meeting logs. So the judges can see a visual documentation of what happened at each meeting. Whenever you're making your meeting logs, keep in mind that the judges like to see that everyone contributed in all areas of the team, not just their specific section. You can see a picture of an example of one of our meeting logs on the right. Using the information the judges got from the judging presentation and the engineering notebook, the judges will consider you for awards. If you're in the top 3 for certain awards, judges will come to the pits of your team and ask you some questions. So make sure, even during robot matches, someone's always there to answer their questions and address their concerns. You can be nominated for multiple awards, but remember, you can only win one judged award. An example of an award you could win is the Inspire Award. This is basically the award of all awards. For the Inspire Award, you must submit an engineering notebook, and the team that wins the Inspire Award is basically the embodiment of the first challenge. They're the top contender for many of the other judged awards. They must practice gracious professionalism, have a lot of outreach that's like documented in their notebook, and have a good design to their robot. So it's like the most well-rounded team.
The next award is the Connect Award. And the criteria for this is that you have to connect with your local STEM community, whether that be connecting with other FTC teams, or maybe parents that participate in the STEAM industry, or even friends that are in another STEM-related activity. And we actually won the Connect Award last year, and we won this by collaborating with a local FTC team to help improve our design of our robot. The judges like to see that you are reaching out to other STEAM communities and getting input from them, and it shows how you really think about building a robot and the thought you put into design. And in your engineering notebook, you should list all the instances that you've had of these, like with who you collaborated or any meetings you may have had with people. The next award is the Motivate Award, and this constitutes spreading FIRST and its ideals throughout your community, so making other people aware of FIRST and the activities you can do with FIRST. It includes practicing gracious professionalism, and you can also a really big indicator if you're able to recruit new members or mentors from activities that you hold for the community. And it's also important to list the activities you do and when and how you did them in the engineering notebook, and to at least mention them in your presentation. The Collin's Aerospace Award is for a creative and out-of-the-box solution for a specific design in your robot. And this can be for either a specific subpart of your robot, like a gripper or a chassis or something like that, or it can be for the entire robot. However, the part that is being judged, like the gripper or whatever it is, has to work consistently throughout the entire competition. The entire robot does not necessarily need to work unless the entire robot is what you're getting the award for. Your engineering notebook also needs to show specifically how you arrived at the solution and the decisions you made along the way. The Control Award is about how you use sensors and software to increase your robot's functionality and reliability. And these sensors can be stuff like color sensors or distance sensors, or it can be specific code for your robot, but it needs to work reliably throughout all the matches. Your engineering notebook needs to have information about them. It doesn't necessarily need to have the code coding these sensors, but you need to have information about it. And in order to be considered for the award, you need to submit the Control Award content sheet collected during your judged interview. The Think Award is also about overcoming a specific engineering challenge with a creative solution. And your engineering notebook will be the main way that the judges will see how you did this. You should include pictures and drawings of each stage of your design, and CAD drawings of your robot design are a really good idea because this really impresses the judges. You should also have a reason behind why you made each decision and change in your design, such as the science and mathematics behind it, and you should also depict the lessons you learned while going through these iterations of your robot.
The next award is the Design Award. This judged award recognizes design elements of the robot that are both functional and aesthetic. In order to win this award, your team must demonstrate respect and gracious professionalism to all team members. Your team must submit an engineering notebook with an engineering section that includes detailed robot design drawings. Your robot differentiates itself from other teams, and your design is both aesthetic and functional. And finally, as always, don't forget to be kind.
So usually you'll be given your schedule for the tournament for the day before the opening ceremony. Usually a team either gets 4 or 5 qualification matches for the day. You'll be assigned to another team to form an alliance, and you'll verse another alliance, as FTC matches are 2v2. You'll have to be the red alliance or the blue alliance. You should try to pay close attention for the schedule, as you could potentially lose a match because of arriving too late on time. You'll have 10 to 15 minute breaks between matches, but you should try to arrive at least 3 matches before your match to start at the queuing stations. And any last minute modifications that you want or need to make to your robot, do them before arriving at the queuing station, as you could be disqualified or get a yellow card for making a modification. So after all of the qualification matches, your final rankings will be released, and that'll be used on alliance selection. And FTC has 2 ways of doing this. The first way they look at it is average ranking points. So if you win a match, you and your allied team will both get 2 ranking points. The losing team will get 0. This is the same as if you don't show up or are disqualified. If it's a match, every single team gets 1 point. And then it's divided by the number of matches you had, in case there's a chance of an team being the odd one out, having 4 matches while everyone else has 5, for example. And if there's still ties while that occurs, FTC will then look at tiebreaker points. Basically, each team's tiebreaker points from each match are the number of points for the losing alliance before any penalties occur. If there's 21 or greater number of teams at a tournament, the elimination matches will have 4 alliances with 3 teams each. Otherwise, it'll be 4 alliances with 2 teams each. So how alliance selection works is the top 4 teams will choose first. So the first number 1 team will choose, and then the number 2 team will choose, and so on and so forth. So say the number 1 team asks the number 2 team to be joined. And if the number 2 team accepts, then the number 5 team will move up to become number 4, and it'll get to select. Another idea to keep in mind is, if say the number 1 team asks the number 3 team to join and it refuses, and then the number 2 team cannot ask the number 3 team to join. Basically, because of gracious professionalism, if you refuse to be allied with one team, while you can select what teams you want to be allied with, you can't join another team if they ask you. So finally, how the elimination matches work is, first you have the semifinals, where the number 1 seeded alliance is going against the number 4 seeded alliance, and the number 2 seeded alliance is going up against the number 3 seeded alliance. And they'll play a best out of 3 match, where basically whoever is the first to 2 victories will move on to the finals, and which is 1 match between the last remaining 2 alliances to determine who wins.
So for penalties during the challenges, a lot of penalties vary by the challenge, but regardless of that, the penalties can be divided into 2 sections, major and minor penalties. Major penalties give the opposing alliance 20 points, and minor penalties give the opposing alliance 10 points. There are some set in stone penalties that remain constant throughout regardless of the challenge. So like, for example, some of these penalties are extending beyond the border, damaging other robots, starting early, etc. And for FTC etiquette, you should respect the judge's decision. Most likely, the judge's decision will not be changed, and it will remain as determined. Do not argue with the judges; it just appears improper and rude. Make sure you respect your opponents and you follow Grace's professionalism throughout the entire tournament.
All right, for those people who do qualify at any qualifier competition at regional or state, there are a couple people who qualify immediately in order. The first person is the qualifier host, whichever team actually hosts the competition. But this qualification position may or may not be offered based on the region. The second person to qualify is the Inspire Award winner. Third is the Winning Alliance captain. Fourth is the Inspire Award runner-up, second place. And fifth is the Winning Alliance is the first team selected by the Winning Alliance. More teams may qualify based on the number of available spots at a qualifier. Qualification at a regional qualifier allows for competition at a state qualifier. If you qualify at a regional located in Pennsylvania or any state for that matter, it only allows you to compete at the state qualifier for the state in which you qualified at regionals. Qualification at any state qualifier allows you to move on to the national championship. So qualification means a couple things for your team. It's a really great achievement, but it brings a lot of challenges with it. You have to question your robot's performance in the qualifier that you qualified at. You have to think about how you can improve your robot's functionality and whether or not you have time before the next competition to make all the changes that you want to. You should also think about strategies for task completion that would make it so your team could use its time most efficiently to improve your robot. Your team should also think about how it can better employ its efforts to improve your robot engineering notebook and more things. Regardless of how much time your team has before its next competition, it should put its best effort into improving everything that it can. Preparation for future seasons. Postseason, regardless of whether you qualified for state or nationals, is a really great time to reflect on your past season. You can think on your team's work ethic and attitudes towards completing tasks during the season and how these can be improved. You can also think on how your team can better organize itself based on each member's talents to better complete tasks. Time after season can also be used to plan for better team success. You can think carefully on what other teams included in their robots that may have allowed them to do better in qualifiers that you attended. And you can also contemplate how your team can engage in outreach and other practices that might increase your chances of qualifying or winning other awards.
Yep, so thanks for listening to our presentation. We'll now get to some of the questions on Slido, as well as we'd like to remind you to, fill out the feedback survey after we're done with the questions. So we'll get started with the first question, which is, can you give tips on scouting, especially choosing second picks or how to get picked? And Kadar will answer that.
So usually during an FTC qualifier, other teams will walk up to you before the qualification matches start, and they'll usually have a notepad with questions pre-prepared. Like if you look at the challenge for the last season where we had the Skystone challenge, teams might have been, for example, really fast at getting blocks, but not so fast at stacking them or vice versa. And so if a team that's really fast at getting blocks might want to find a team that's really good at stacking them quickly. And so one piece of advice is definitely to have a notepad of pre-prepared questions and to know your robot's strengths and weaknesses and convey that well to other teams. And also take initiative. Talk about what you can do to other teams so that they'll remember you. And if they get placed highly, they'll remember you to pick you as well.
Yep, so the next question is, do you do a team cheer during your presentation? And Rohan will answer that.
So, it really depends on your presentation. Although if you do a team cheer, some judges might like the personality and team spirit. They're always looking that teams are collaborative, having fun. And if you develop a team cheer or show that you're having fun, judges might appreciate this. And this counts towards your goal towards winning the Inspire Award.
Yep. So the next question is any tips on out-of-state competitions? So in regards to that question, well, the first part is you out-of-state competitions, you can, let's say you're a team based in Pennsylvania, you can compete in like Ohio state qualifiers, but that means that you qualify for Ohio state qualifiers and you'd have to go to their state qualifier. So definitely if you find it to be more practical to go out of state, that's not necessarily a bad option. Then again, it also comes with the fact that their state qualifier may be a pretty far commute for you. And considering that some of the teams are as large as 15 people, you might want to also factor in costs and other stuff. So it's always better to stay in home state. But if it's practical for you, definitely going out of state is an option. So the next question is, how do you get the Connect Award and not the Motivate Award? And William will answer that.
So the Connect Award is more based on getting help for your robot design. It's more technical, like asking other people with STEM knowledge to help you in your design or for feedback and criticism on your design. While the Motivate Award is for reaching out to people who are not necessarily involved in STEAM already and getting them to join your team, for instance, or just showing them your robot in general. So one is for getting feedback for your robot, and the other is for letting other people know about your robot.
Yep, so the next question is, can you have an online notebook or print out CAD onto a paper notebook? How about a fusion of both? And Sai will answer that.
Well, the competition requires the engineering notebook to be completely physical, so you would not be able to have an online notebook. So yes, you would print out your CAD if you chose to use it and put it in your paper notebook. As for options you have with your engineering notebook, you could either have a electronic one where you print out stuff or a handwritten one. And they don't suggest using a fusion of both. They kind of want you to stick with the same format.
Okay, so the next question is, which award is easiest to get? And Ronit will answer that one.
So no award is necessarily easiest to get. It's just where you put your most effort into while working as a team and building the robot. Like our team put a lot of effort into outreach and development. That's why we were able to win the Connect Award. But it just depends on your team and where you put your most focus into.
Yep, so the next question is, do you recommend finishing inspection before or after judging? And Rohan will take that one.
So I feel like you should definitely have inspection before judging because that frees up a lot of time and you're not constantly worried about getting to inspection after judging. And I feel like that frees up a lot of time and inspection should be done before judging.
Yep, so the next question is, what's the best way to schedule the qualifiers? So the important thing to remember is that you can only go to 3 qualifiers from which you can qualify. So the advantages of different points in the season is that if you go to an earlier qualifier, which are usually in like late December to early January, the advantage there is that you might be going up against a weaker teams because not everyone has had the time to develop complex robots. So if you think you have a solid robot, you definitely want to go for the earlier competitions since that might give you an easier shot at qualifying. If you are playing the longer game of waiting to go to a later qualifier, we do kind of warn against that because definitely there are a lot of teams there that have not qualified yet. So they are looking to qualify as much as you are. And also that late into the season, many teams will have developed complex robots. So it's definitely important that you do go to one of the earlier qualifiers. But if you're confident in your ability to develop a good robot, then you might want to go to a later qualifier to scout out the competition if you're that confident in what you can do. So the next question is, do you plan specifically for a particular award, or do you just try to embody first principles and the awards will come as a byproduct? I think Liam can take that one.
Yeah, I think it's most important to embody first principles. You shouldn't try to go towards a particular award and just focus on that one award. You should try to do a well-rounded amount of things, like participate in outreach, but also focus on your robot, because all of them have their part in the competition and will help you. And if you work on everything versus just one particular award, it also increases your chances for the Inspire Award, which is the most important award because it helps you qualify for states.
Okay, so the next question is it easier to win awards in earlier qualifiers, not just the robot competition? I think Rohan can take that one.
So it really depends not if it's an early qualifier or not. It's based on how many teams are there. Like in earlier qualifiers, there may not be as many teams there, so it might be easier to win many awards there, but it really depends on your robot versus the competition. Going to an earlier qualifier doesn't necessarily mean there'll be less teams there or more teams there, vice versa. So it doesn't really matter, but if there's less teams there, then you might have a chance.
Yeah, so adding on to that, it's definitely not like a guaranteed thing one way or the other. But yeah, when you go to earlier qualifiers, there is the chance that there's less teams there. So building off of what he said, so definitely it's not a guarantee, but there are chances that it's easier to win an award. The next question is, what does your team do when no one wants to work on the engineering notebook? I think Sai can take that one.
Well, whenever you have this dilemma, it's important to remember that all parts of the competition are equally important, and it's not necessarily that building the robot is more important than the engineering notebook, because you need to highlight every point to succeed. So I think it's basically just that somebody's going to have to work on it. So you just got to look at your strengths and see where you would thrive and go there for the best of the team.
Yep, so the next question is, as a team that has gone to states many times, can you give insight on how to qualify for first championship? Yeah, so this is actually just our second year. Last year was actually our first season, so we haven't actually gone to any higher levels because, as you know, because of the COVID-19 crisis, there hasn't necessarily been any state or national level tournaments. So it is our second year. We aren't necessarily as experienced to answer that question, but definitely some tips to get to states and higher is that it's always about the collaboration. And as you can see, that's like one of the core values of FIRST. We as a team like to make sure that everyone's included in the process. And we think that's a huge part of our success because last year we started pretty late into the season and we were still able to put up a solid finish at our qualifiers. So we definitely think it's important to, one, start early in the season, and two, also make sure that everyone is included in the process because that can definitely make you get further. The next question is it better to have a large team in which not everyone is at the same level of skill and experience, or a small focused team with high caliber only? So I think Tasneem can take that one.
So it depends on what you want to do or your goals for the season. So with a big team, it's more outreach and you have more members with different ages and skills that they can learn more new skills. But it can also be a little bit disorganized. So sometimes it can be hard to finish tasks. And having a small team, it makes it easier to get tasks done and on time without any confusion. But there's also an advantage of having a large team that you can divide the team into different smaller teams that can finish specific tasks. So you can have a building team or an outreach team, fundraise team, and so on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So
yeah,
you can.
adding on to what Tasneem said. So personally, our team is a larger team, and we like it this way because there's a lot of people, as Tasneem said, who can branch out to different areas. We have people who are good in coding. We have people who are good in building. We have people that are good at communicating, so they work in outreach. So it depends on like who you really have, and if the people on the team are good at team working, delegating tasks, that such of thing. So it's all about preference. There's no real right answer.
So the next question is, have any of you done FRC and FTC in the same year? How did they conflict? Unfortunately, none of us have done it, but I think Rohan Nag can expand upon that.
All right, so again, since none of us have any FRC experience, we can't exactly speak onto the competition schedule for it, but I do have an associate who participated in the FRC competition, and the thing that's very different about FRC is that their challenge takes a lot more time to plan a robot around in order to build and compete with it. And if you were to engage in both seasons simultaneously, you would have to be working on an intricate plan for creating an FRC robot and operating it while you're starting with the early and more mid-range preparations that are involved in an FTC season because of the staggered way in which their challenges are issued. So whether or not you want to participate in both is really up to you and up to your own decisions and judgment of how you'd be able to balance your time.
Okay, yep. So the next question is, are you a part of a school associated team? If so, what does your build space look like? I think Vinay could take that one.
So in our school, our tech ed teacher has a very big space of a lab, and he has many tools that allow us to. There's not really any limits for a robot, and we have all the necessary tools to help us build our robot.
So the next question is, what does your meeting schedule look like? I think Ronik can take that one.
Yeah, so we met on Thursdays of every week. We would meet, like as Vinay said, outside of our tech ed room. For the people who are in middle school, we would have them come up as soon as their school would finish. We would have them come up. They would walk up from their school. But yeah, we stay up for approximately 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And yeah, as the competition neared, we would spend more time.
Yep. So the next question is, how much time would you guys how much time would you guys say you put into working on the robot per week? I think Rohan Donta can take that one. Okay, so yeah, we spend about per week we spent about 7 to 10 hours. We met every day after school between like 1 and 2 hours. As competition got near, we definitely did spend like upwards of like 10 to 15, maybe even 20 hours because some of us went home and worked on the robot as well. So it's definitely important not to cram. You want to make sure you space out how much work you do, and FTC is a lot of work. It can be a drag for like 10 to 15 hours a week, but it's definitely worth it in the end for the awards, the competition, and also the future applications that FTC allows you to have. It really is a real world type of program. So the next question is, how thick is your engineering notebook? And I think Sai can take that one. Or Rohan Kandola can take that one.
All right, I guess I'll just take it then. Last season our notebook was about 100 pages, and I'd recommend that your notebooks be more than 100 pages. Some teams have two engineering notebooks, one for like outreach and one for design and the fundraising. But yeah.
Yep. So the next question is, how do you get the Inspire Award? I think Sai can take that. Or Rohan Kandal could.
I'll just answer it. Inspire Award, since Inspire Award is almost like a culmination of all the different parts and ideals of FIRST, the main thing that alerts the judges that you should be a candidate for Inspire is that if you're a candidate for a lot of the other awards. So if you're nominated for a lot of the other awards, let's say you're nominated for 3 of the other awards, the judges might consider you for Inspire because that shows how well-rounded you are of a team and how you put work into every part of the first challenge.
Yep. So the next question is, if you have a big team, would you recommend splitting into 2 teams? So we as a team, actually, we have 4 teams. We have a documentation team, a fundraising team, a programming team, and also a building team. At meetings, we do somewhat, divide and conquer, but definitely it's important not necessarily to associate as separate teams. You might want to divide and conquer, but at the end of each meeting, it's important that all of you meet up together and make sure that you're all on the same page, because definitely if you start splitting your team, it's easy to get lost as to who's where. So it's very important to have status updates in that regard. The next question is, could you explain what some good math pages there are for any team to put in the notebook? I think either Rohan or, Rohan could take that one.
Wait, I'm a little confused what you mean by math pages.
Yeah, so would anybody be able to explain what they mean by math pages? Okay, so we'll just skip that question for now. What types of, okay, so for the Think Award, I think Liam could expand upon that one.
Yeah, I'm guessing you mean by like calculations. It's good to have calculations for like specific parts of your robot, like gripper torque or like gears, or how your wheels work. For instance, if you have omnidirectional wheels, there are some calculations that support how that work, and it would be good to include things like that in your notebook.
Yep, so the next question is, what types of programming languages does FTC use to code? So there's either block-based code that you can use, or you can use on-bot Java. So yeah, so essentially there's only really 2 languages. You can also use Android Studio, but it would have to be Java-based. There's definitely some good code on GitHub and also FTC Forum that lets you know more about this. The code is pretty like specific to FTC. I myself was experienced with Java, but adapting to FTC was a whole nother challenge. So you definitely want to not just treat it like any other programming task. It is more specific to FTC. It's quite helpful to have some background knowledge on programming, but at the same time, you don't want to be functionally fixed on that. So yeah, so there's Java and block-based, and you can use on-bot Java, block-based, or Android Studio as your IDE. So yeah, if you guys have any more questions, otherwise we'll just wrap it up. Okay then, So yeah, thanks for listening to our presentation. Okay. So the next question is, would you recommend officer positions for a first-year team? Are they necessary? I think Tasneem can take that one.
So I think as, from our experience last year, we didn't have specific officer roles because we didn't feel like they're necessary because we were organizing ourselves. But this year, we decided to have officer roles to be even more organized. So I would recommend to have officer roles to someone has the authority to keep everyone in check if they don't finish their tasks.
Yep. So the next question is, how did we get our team name? I think Ronit could expand upon that.
Yeah, so our school mascot is the Lions, and we just kind of thought like, words that correlate with lions, and so we like thought of the word Leo, and obviously we wanted to like have a robotics incorporated name, so we just kind of mixed Leo and bots, and we got Leo bots.
Yep. So the next question is, what are some tips you can give on fundraising? I think Vinay can take that one.
Fundraising. Usually, a lot of companies usually have some sort of page on their websites that have fundraising opportunities, and that's basically what we did. We looked on different websites of other companies and just looked at their fundraising tabs and just signed up for the opportunities that they gave that were available.
Yep. So the next question is, what are some outreach ideas that can be done during the COVID-19 outbreak? I think Rohan can answer that one.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of things that can be done remotely. This workshop is actually an idea with the COVID-19 outbreak, how we're teaching others about FTC, expanding our knowledge, teaching others about FTC. So that's another way. Workshops. Some other outreach ideas are creating a YouTube channel. That's also a great way to get your message out, to have your viewers see some YouTube videos. You can make videos about your autonomous, your CAD designs, other stuff like that. That's also a good idea. And yeah, I think that's about it. There's also other ways, but yeah, YouTube channel is a good idea. Creating a website to post all of your announcements and other such miscellaneous items like that.
Yep. So the next question is, what omnidirectional wheels do you guys recommend? So I'll begin to answer that, but I think Kadar can also provide some input. So in terms of omnidirectional wheels, there are actual omnidirectional wheels that come with the Andy Mark kit. We don't necessarily recommend using those because they're quite flimsy, and for heavier bots, it's definitely very slow to move with those. We would recommend Mecanum wheels. The ones we use are the GoBuilda Mecanum wheels, but there's also other types of Mecanum wheels that I think Kadar could expand upon.
So GoBuilda Mechanic wheels are definitely the best for their price range, but Andy Mark also makes Mechanic wheels and Nexus. They're also Nexus Mechanic wheels, and overall, while GoBuilda Mechanic wheels might be the cheapest, in terms of quality, Nexus Mechanic wheels may be the best, and they're definitely going to be what we're using next year.
Yep. So if you want some good ideas on what are some good parts, if you search up GM0, it gives you Game Manual 0, which was an application put together by some of the top teams. And there's a section on Mecanum wheels, which ranks the best Mecanum wheels. As Kadar said, I believe Nexus is the one that's ranked the best. So you could use that to get some ideas of what are some good parts to use. So the last question, so the question is, how much did all of your parts end up costing together? I think Tasneem can take that one.
So last year, all of our parts cost about 2K. So it might be more, but we had a lot of grants. So we had the rookie grant that helped us with some of the expenses. We had sponsors that helped us, but overall, an FTC season would cost about like from 1K to 3K.
Yeah, so FTC is quite expensive for rookie teams, but the good thing is the rookie grant, which is $1,000. So that can cover a lot of your costs. And the whole purpose of that is to encourage more teams to get into FTC. So definitely if you make use of the the grant for rookie teams, it is not a significant financial burden. Also, with fundraising, a lot of teams are willing to give you that money. So it really isn't a lot of out-of-pocket cost, even though it seems like a large number up front. The next question is, what's some advice for starting a new team? I think Rohan can take that one.
So not long ago, we were actually not long ago we were actually a new team, and we actually formed this club through our school. And it was a very large and long process. We had to get support from a faculty member in our school, and we actually had to go to the board and propose our idea of having a school meeting. And this took a lot of time. But if you're committed to doing FTC and you have an idea of your vision for the next year, you can propose an idea to your school or just starting a new team within your community. And that can be very beneficial. You need to attract members and stuff like that. But just don't give up. And that's about the advice I have.
Yeah, so going off of Rohan, yeah, sure, Tisney, you can go.
To add on to that, I think if you're gonna start a new team, just first of all finding 2 mentors, so to register your team, then finding enough members. I believe the minimum is 2 members per team, and then you don't even have to talk to your school. You can just, as Rohan said, start in your community. Just get the registration price and pay that, and you have a team.
Yes, so the most important part of the team is to make sure you have committed members. It's definitely not just like a slack job. FTC is definitely a commitment that you should put yourself to. If you have a set of committed members, it's definitely not hard at all to start a team. There's several routes you could take. We obviously have a club through the school, but you can also start a community team where, you know, even your parents can be the mentors, and that itself is enough to get you into FTC. So the next question is, what CAD software is the best in your opinion? I think Vishwas can take that one.
All right, so our team uses Autodesk Fusion 360. So Autodesk is kind, and they give free licenses to students, which lasts 3 years. So Autodesk does have different softwares such as Tinkercad, Inventor, Fusion 360. Tinkercad is very easy, and I would highly recommend it if you just want to 3D print some small parts for your bot. Fusion 360 and Inventor both have their own benefits. Many FTC teams do use both, but I do feel like that is an individual team decision on which one you would like to choose.
So the next question is, how long did it take for you guys to build the robot? I think Tisneem or Rohan Nag can expand upon that.
All right. So for us, as we mentioned before, we started late in the season because we had to talk to the school and get our team registered. And by the time our parts came, we only had like a few weeks before our first qualifier. So we really had not that much time to build the robot. So it took us like from 2 to 3 weeks of meetings to finish our robot. And after our first qualifiers, we made some more changes to our robot. So we kept building our robot till like the day, a couple of days before the qualifier.
So the next question is, how many people do you think are necessary to start an FTC team? Tasneem already brought this up. You need a minimum of 2 and you can have a maximum of 15. There's definitely successful teams with only 2 members, and there's also successful teams with 10 and above members. So it's definitely not about the number of people you have, it's about how good you work together, because 2 people on the same page is better than 10 people who are divided out and have no idea what they're doing. So it's definitely important that you don't necessarily prioritize the number of members you have, more so prioritize your ability to collaborate with each other. The next question is, does your school help you with your funds? And I think Rohan can take that one.
So I think it depends on obviously your circumstances, what school you go to. But as a trial club, we were announced a trial club in our first year of FTC, and the school did cover some costs, but mainly we had to fundraise on our own, and we did this through many outlets. I think Vinay can expand on this, but we did Moe's, we did Firehouse Subs. We reached out to all of these people, and we had to fundraise our own money for most of it. And the school did pay for some of this stuff, but the majority we fundraised on our own.
The next question is, what level of professional attire do you recommend for a qualifier? There is no real dress code for a qualifier. Most teams do have like a similar dress code with each other. Like all of you might decide to wear blue jeans and a team t-shirt. Definitely a team t-shirt is a route that a lot of teams take, including ourselves. Get your logo on a shirt along with your sponsors. A team t-shirt serves 2 purposes. It shows your team spirit, and it's also an excellent way to get money from sponsors, since by putting them on your shirt, you're essentially giving them advertising, and that's also a route you can take to get money. So yeah, I think that's the end. Thank you for listening.
And don't forget to fill out the feedback form that's in the Zoom chat.